Okay, so I got you your chai tea.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. That's your go-to tea when you actually have tea.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit strong.
That's the way you have to have tea. Yeah, you don't want to. You don't drink weak tea or
No.
weak coffee.
So it's a man's tea, chai tea.
Yes.
Actually, that's a good commercial. Thanks for coming on.
Why, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. When Anne was telling me about it, it sounded quite interesting.
Yeah, you were actually one of the first people to encourage me with it.
Oh,
You were actually one of the first to encourage me. I was like, yeah, we're doing tea talks, talking about career. You said you wanted to know a little bit about it. So it's Tea Talks with Suanesh. It's very much opening up the conversation with different professionals to, explore the ups and downs of that particular profession. First of all, how they got into it, why they got into it. Just the educational background for it, the different challenges, if it is what they expected it to be. Because a lot of the times people tell you about a career, they're like, oh, go be a lawyer because it's a high, there's high income. And then you go to be a lawyer and you weren't prepared for the amount of stress that it would, and you're like, I'm not even getting paid enough for the amount of stress. So just comparing, what's being told versus what's actually happening, the reality of the career, and just providing information for mostly young adults, university students, students thinking about career and career planning, and even for those thinking about a second career, older adults thinking about what am I going to do next, kind of a thing. So that's really the vision behind it.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's the vision behind Tea Talks with Suanesh, and I like tea.
Well, that's good.
I like tea, so yeah, and just the conversation feel too.
Yeah.
Having a cup of tea and chit chatting about it.
Nice.
But yeah.
Nice. I like that. That's
So
good.
Mark Rogowski.
Yes.
Mr. Mark Rogowski.
That's me.
Civil engineering. First of all, thank you for helping build our community.
Oh.
Our community literally depends on what you do.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about, how you ventured off into becoming a civil engineer.
Well, it's an interesting path. I've always been intrigued by engineering sciences. And I originally went to school to study more on the environmental side. I always loved being outdoors. We have a family cottage up north, and I was always outside and being in the wilderness and out of doors. And I was really intrigued in that. So I wanted to study along some of those lines. And of course, back then in the 70s, they had, maybe forestry. And it was starting to come out with some of these environmental studies, which was a little bit a combination of environmental issues as well, along with civil engineering. The problem was when I graduated, there wasn't very many jobs in the environmental science industry.
Okay, yeah.
So, I basically started working in big construction on, roads and sewers and subdivision developments. And that was back in the early 80s when there was a fair growth boom down in the GTA, Toronto, Mississauga, Oakville, Brampton, Burlington area down in there. And I lived in Toronto, so, I figured, well, this is going to be an opportunity. But I always was worked hands-on aspect. I was, always working in the field on the construction sites. And after a period of time, I realized that I love being outside. I love being in the outdoors. But I realized that, when I get myself in the older years, when I'm going to be in my 50s and, heaven forbid, the 60s, do I want to be outside in the elements all the time? And I decided, well, no, I think I'm going to come in and start working in the office, which is interesting because I never, ever wanted to work in a cubicle. Yeah. The idea of, going in an office in a suit and tie just didn't intrigue me. Going out, in on the job sites with work boots and hard hats, that intrigued me.
Yeah.
But
the hands-on, at the center of the, the workforce kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're working in the field, what you find is you have to make your decisions based on the existing ground conditions at that time. and you can do all the science and all the calculations in an office to figure, your size of the pipes that you're going to be putting into the ground and the flow of the storm sewers, etc. But until you actually get out on the sites and you start digging in the ground, you don't know what's under the surface. And each day was a brand new challenge for it. And then I basically carried on with that and moved my way through the design, and then up into management, and then up to senior management, and then running large projects. And so the design became second and third down the road, and then your field work was even further down the road. So I was removing myself further and further away from the actual engineering side of things, and more on the project management and the administrative side of things, which is a whole different area to be working in, because you're dealing with multi-million-dollar projects. You're dealing with timelines and decisions which have to be made quickly. So to say that there's a little bit of stress, it might be a bit of an understatement.
Wow. It's just a broad field, actually. So there's a spectrum of things that you can do when being a civil engineer. Like there are different levels or sections to it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't think I was exposed to that. I don't think I understood even what a civil engineer entailed, like what it was all about. Yeah,
and a lot of it is because the area that we work in, people really don't see it, right? You're talking about sewer pipes.
But we stand on it.
That's right. Exactly.
We need it.
You drive on it. You drive over it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff is either buried below the surface, or it's not a glamorous kind of career in the sense that you when you see the finished product. I think it is. Driving down the road and seeing a nice new roadway with bridges over top of it, I think that's a beautiful thing. And other people say, oh, there's another bridge. Oh, well. Right?
Or there's another bridge. Where will the squirrels live?
Well, exactly. Yep. There's that. Oh my God, you put a highway through just where, the tsetse fly and the turtle used to live, right?
Yeah.
And, we have rules and regulations now that take those things into consideration, right? And fortunately, we're, especially in Canada and Ontario, we have such a vast land area. We're fortunate enough that our impact isn't as severe as a lot of people might think it is. Not only that, the engineering science that we've been expanded on doing now, especially with what's called stormwater management.
Okay.
And what that basically is that when you used to have just a natural ground, there was a lot of absorption into the water into the ground. Trees would absorb it, plants would absorb it, and now you'd kind of take that out of there and you put a hard surface on it, like a roof of a house, or your driveways or your roads, or even your lawns don't absorb as much as, say, a forest would. So, then we come up with stormwater management, where we look at how we store the water and how we filter the water out. So, when it goes back into the water system, it's clean again. And actually today, the water from a stormwater management is cleaner than it is naturally in the ponds and rivers.
Oh, okay.
Because of the technology that we have. So we've really gone a long way to bringing back the balance of nature and into the construction industry. So there's a lot of different facets of in the civil engineering side. Like, you can be dealing specifically with roads, you can be dealing with sewers, you can be dealing with development, you can be doing with water course realignments. There's so many different variations if people are interested in doing this for a career.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit, and I kind of plummeted you forward a little bit.
Okay.
You jumped a little bit forward. You were talking about environmental science and how that didn't have as many job opportunities. Did you mention how exactly you transitioned into civil engineering? Did you have to go back to school? Or back in the day, you just kind of transitioned seamlessly?
It was when you were studying it was part of your course curriculum.
Okay.
So if you're studying strictly civil engineering, you would have a tendency of doing more structural components on it, whereas the environmental side, you'd be doing more of what's called hydrological components, which is basically the study of water and water cycles and stormwater management. So you're still studying civil engineering. You're just specializing in a little bit of a different discipline at that time.
Okay.
So that's why it is.
Yeah.
So when I wanted to stay in more on the environmental side, really there wasn't many opportunities for it. So, you got all the other courses that you took for your engineering, civil engineering. So why not use that instead?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a job that, when students do it, it's not difficult to find a
Not
job.
right now.
No.
And especially in Ontario, we're extremely blessed because our population is always going to continually grow. And because our population is always going to continually grow, we're always going to have infrastructure to support that population.
We're always going to have to expand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be work there. In fact, right now, any of the building trades or construction industry, we're very in an imbalance with people coming out, technical staffing to do the work. We're basically understaffed through the whole industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get off your computers and come on into engineering.
Go into engineering, yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's definitely one of those fields that is like parents would be like, oh, become an engineer or become a doctor or become a lawyer. It's one of those more favored professions and highly respected professions because of the impact in society. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't come without work. Because it's that way because there is a lot of work involved. It's
like any kind of professional industry. Any type of profession you're going to get into, it takes work. They say in order to be an expert, you have to put 10,000 hours in, and you have to put 10,000 hours into this industry, just like you would be doing whether you're, anything from being a singer to, somebody that's working on a construction site. It just
takes work.
It takes work.
Yeah, you
That's
can't
it.
Escape that.
No, and the thing is, you have to enjoy what you're doing. The bottom line, it comes down to it. I didn't get into the industry for the money. I wanted to just be outside. I like to be outside, and that's why I got into it. And I said, as long as I made enough that I could be living a good lifestyle, I'd be happy with it. It is an industry that there's a great opportunity to make money.
Definitely.
And the interesting thing is that engineering, people that gravitate towards it are the ones that do well in science in school, and they're the way that they process information, they do it very logically and scientifically, which is fantastic for our industry. But our industry, a lot of it is built around interpersonal relationships. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum that a person that goes into engineering, because they understand the science, but the interpersonal relationships that you build, people skills, is really what makes it really drives it and makes it grow. So the person that would get into engineering is not necessarily the person that would be like the one that would want to be in upper management dealing with the layers of different approval agencies, because you're dealing with the people.
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of engineers, I don't do people well.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that, because the impression is that if you're strong in the sciences, in physics, mathematics, like this is the profession for you. But then we neglect the part where we have to develop our interpersonal skills. Do you find that happens a lot around you, like with colleagues? Okay.
Yeah, it does. I know quite a few engineers are brilliantly smart people. You can ask them a question, and my goodness, how they can remember some of the numbers and formulas is just beyond me. But then to try and relate that information to somebody that doesn't understand it that well, there becomes a bit of a
disconnect.
Exactly. How do you explain to a layman, how you develop the storm flows through a pipe, and you start giving the geometric design on things, and people are going,
I wouldn't get it.
Exactly.
I wouldn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So it's an interesting disconnect, as you were saying, in the industry. So We find that like there's other industries where when you're getting into the management and supervision of the companies in the industry that you're in, it's all based around the interpersonal skills and, you know, the human resources and how you deal with people and how do you motivate people. And whereas engineering is still a very logical, factual, scientific basis. It's black, white, right, wrong. That's it.
Well, how did you develop your interpersonal skills? Like, did you have to intentionally work on it, or you're just the charismatic? you just have that charm naturally, so you don't even have to work on it.
Well, thank you. It was a blessing and a curse through all my school years growing up. The teachers always said to my parents, "Mark is such a lovely boy. He connects well, but he just does not stop talking. If he would just shut up, he'd be fine." Like, I got more detentions from talking in class than anything. I just like people.
Yeah.
I always like people.
Yeah.
And I like people and I like science. And
so that personality just worked out to be a strength for you.
It did. Yeah, it did.
Let's just have some tea.
Please.
Yes. Because I'm almost forgot about it. Just getting into civil engineering.
I'm starting to get shaky. I'm missing my tea.
You need your tea fix.
Exactly.
Hopefully it's the perfect strength for you, Mark.
Well, my mom...
And you said you just take sugar,
Just
right?
a little bit of sugar. My mom always says, tea's got to be good and strong. She used to call it builder's tea.
Builder's tea.
Yeah. So back when where my mom was raised many years ago, they would put a teapot on the wood stove and put tea bags in it and just let it sit there all day long.
Wow. To get everything out of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it would be blacker than a cup of coffee. And that's how they drank their tea.
Wow. I can't do that. I like we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I like my tea a little bit light. I taste it, but not that it's overpowering, you know, but I think I made it a bit strong for you. No, it's not strong. We should put another tea bag in there.
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Put another tea bag in there. We skipped a little bit over financing, though. Let's backtrack.
Sure. What do you want?
That's one of the, I don't know, that's just one of the shiny prizes of being an engineer, is that the salary, it's really above average.
Yep.
And people, what are we looking at? Is there a particular range in Canada?
Yeah, it is. See, the thing is, it's one of the few industries that you still kind of, in a way, apprentice in it, in the sense that once you graduate from school, you have to still spend a couple of years doing a bit of, how can I word it? I call it like apprenticing. So in other words, that you still have to write exams afterwards. Like once you get out of school.
Is that internship?
Well, it's kind of like an internship. You know, you have to write a law and ethics exam. It's kind of like when you go through medical, right? You go through and then you do an intern and then you write a certain amount of hours in that. And the same thing here with us. You have to do a certain amount of hours in working industry so that you have some experience behind you. And then, you know, you have to write law and ethics, et cetera, and stuff like that. Like
a residence. I think doctors do a residency program.
Exactly. Yeah. And then once you get to that point, then you decide on what kind of an area that you want to work in. So you basically spend your first 5 years in the career learning, right? And I mean, see, it's hard for me how can I equate it to today's dollars because it's been so long. I've been in the industry for over 40 years.
Wow. So you are experienced.
Yes. I started, I started working in constructions when I was 16 years old. Okay. And then I went to, I started working in the actual industry in the early 80s. So 80 to 2022 is over 40 years, 42 years. Holy smokes, it's been 42 years. Wow. Congratulations. I digress.
Congratulations. That's a lot of years. Yeah. So I think it's I guess the average that I bumped into was that it's about 80 82,000.
Yeah, in around that area.
Yeah.
And once you start getting up
Annually?
into depending where you're going to go into in the senior management, you're well into the six figures.
Yeah.
Well into the six figures,
This is the job.
Yeah. And then, once you carry on after that, you start getting into senior management, you can possibly get into partnerships, or, you can start up your own company. And then,
As Exhibit A?
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you start up your own company, then the sky's the limit. You can be as big as you want to be. You can grow as much as you want. You can be as small as you want. My challenge now is just to keep things as what my accountant keeps telling me. He says, keep it small, Mark. Keep it small. Don't try and grow. I had a time when I had quite a few staff working for me, and then I said, I just prefer to keep it small. I have myself and my CAD technician who works with me, and it's just the two of us.
CAD technician.
CAD. So
Can you enlighten me?
Oh, CAD. Yeah, CAD is the software that we use to do our design with. So it's computer-aided design.
Yeah.
Computer-aided drafting. So it's used industry-wide.
Okay.
And actually, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when the computer programming design software was coming out, I went in and worked and learned and studied to how to utilize that. And then I actually got to the point where I was training people on the software for the engineering side of things too, as well. Because it just puts another dynamic into your design work. So the CAD technician now works with me, and we set up all our plans, and they do the plans, and then I do the detailed design, and we submit it in and go through the process of getting the approvals and permits.
So is this CAD software, is it like upgraded all the time? Like, do we have the most upgraded form of it? Okay.
Yeah. And it's like all business softwares. They upgrade it regularly. So every 2 years or every 4 years, we upgrade it ourselves. The basis of it hasn't changed. It still does the same basic information. It's just the new ones have a little bit more options, shall I say,
Yeah.
Like Honda Civic is a four-wheel car, so is a Cadillac Escalade. It's just one has a lot more features than the other.
Exactly. So what's the name of your company?
It's called MERTech.
MERTech.
Yeah.
Okay.
MER Tech.
MERTech. So with MERTech, how long did you, when did you start it?
It started back in 2003, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you decided, you want to venture off and go into entrepreneurship as a civil engineer.
Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse at the same time. When you're driven, and it's one of those things where I always wanted to try and achieve a certain goal or a certain mark. And
Mark.
There you go. Yes.
I'm so cheesy.
That's a cheesy one. I love cheesy. I love cheesy.
Wow.
So and that's coming on almost 20 years now that I've had it, and I have ventured out into different avenues. I was involved for a while doing what was called the Eco Energy program for working on homes to try and make them energy efficient. And so I did that for a few years. It was a kind of a government, I guess you could call it a government-funded program. And when that program stopped, I had to switch gears and get myself, back into another type of business model for engineering.
Okay.
And so what I've done is gone from big developments and, multi-100,000 lot home subdivisions to where now today I just concentrate on the small house, the small
scaled
builder.
it down a bit. Yeah.
And I'm just as busy as I was. But the enjoyment I get today is I work one-on-one with people.
Yeah. People. And you love that.
I do.
Yeah. You love that. So, okay. So let's talk about, the working with huge subdivisions as opposed to working individually with clients right now that I guess they want to build their own homes, right? So they just come to you. How does that work? What do they do?
Well, say a person buys a little piece of property, or they have a piece of property and the house on it is, it's basically needs to be torn down. And they say, well, I have a vision. This is what I want. And so, either I get called first, or a house designer gets called first, or a general contractor will get called first. And one of the three of us would say, okay, here's the information that you need. We have to pull these people together as a team to help get the approval processes put forward to you. And so if I'm on board, then I'll say, okay, well, you're going to need to get a legal surveyor involved. You're going to have to get a house designer involved. Architect is, I guess, another way that you could put it.
Yeah.
Then you have you decided on who you're going to be building your house? Here's some people that I've worked with, etc. And so we come together as a kind of a group or as a team, and then we do each of our own component. And then hopefully by that time, we understand what the client is looking for. Mm-hmm. So when we first meet them, when I first meet a client, they have some really interesting ideas of what they want to do, and it's fantastic. And they're always asking me, is that something we can do? And my answer is, with enough money and time, we can engineer anything.
We can do.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
Well, exactly. It's just how long do you got and how much money do you got? Yeah. Really. I've seen some places that are just like incredible. Mm-hmm. And then I see some places that are so quaint and humble, and it's just whatever the people want. So the first thing I got to do is try and decide what it is that they're looking for. Yeah. And then how do we go about engineering it for them, right? And then keeping them informed all the way through the process so that they fully understand what's going on. Because somebody that's starting out new on this and have an idea, they don't understand all the complexities of it. Mm-hmm. And they might have ideas or assumptions, and it's not what really is going to be. So, my job is to let them know, here's what you're going to be looking at, right? A good example of that, and this is what I always use, is people have a nice flat piece of property, gentle sloping from one side, and they say, I want a walkout basement. And I said, okay, that's fair.
Everybody likes a walkout basement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want a walkout basement, that means we got to bring a lot of fill into your property to raise the front of the house up.
Okay.
Because if your land is flat and you have your basement here and your first floor is there, well, you can't have them both on the ground at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I said, usually when you're looking at that, if you want to have a walkout kind of house, then maybe you want to look at a piece of property that has, rolling terrain on it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Can we talk about just the structural capacity of the houses that are being built nowadays? Even if we look at different subdivisions, do you find that there has been a change in, I guess, the quality of the housing structures? Mm-hmm. I've noticed a difference. I've noticed, I guess, a house that I lived in as a child is way stronger than the ones that we have now. We even think about the tornado that happened in Barrie and how, what.
So in Ontario, we have a document that's called the Ontario Building Code. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the Ontario Building Code gets updated regularly.
Okay.
And each time they get updated, it improves itself. So there is this myth that's saying, houses aren't as built as they were 40, 50 years ago.
Is it a myth, though?
It is a myth, yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went from back in, say, the early 1900s when houses were starting to get mass produced, shall we say. Mm-hmm. The materials that they used, a 2x4 was a true 2x4, right? It was 2 inches wide by 4 inches deep, right? And sometimes they were even bigger because your material costs were next to nothing, right? Your labor costs were next to nothing. So putting all that extra material in and the time to build it was easy. As time went on, they got a little bit more efficient and started using different types of materials for buildings, right? Then when we got into the 60s and 70s, things got pared down pretty much as fine as you could get. So your 2x4 was no longer a 2x4. It was a little less. And the reason for that is...
you still called it a 2x4.
Well, because when they originally start off with a piece of wood, it's 2 inches by 4 inches. But then they plane it down to make it smooth. Mm-hmm. So it's not rough. Like the old houses, they were rough. I mean, you'd run your fingers over and you'd have slivers up them all the time. So as time goes on, they'll plane it down. So as time went on, the materials got to what's called the nominal size. They really couldn't go any smaller. Mm-hmm. And then they realized that, well, structurally wise, it's still strong. But then, the insulation values of the houses weren't good. So then they expanded it out, and the last change of the Ontario Building Code says that walls have to be 6 inches, not 4 inches thick. And then your drywall materials, and all the materials now are having a higher standard of quality control on them. What happens is when people look around, it's the finishes of the houses that they see, not the structural components of it.
So structurally, it's fine. It's just
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's the finishing, and it comes down to the old line. Do you want to have a Honda Civic or do you want to have a Cadillac? Right? So if you want to have, your basic entry levels, you're going to get that. But don't compare that to, say, a house that has, crown molding all the way around it and, 8-inch baseboards on it and true hardwood floors, and then expect, that you're going to get it for the price where you're going to have laminate floors and, basic baseboard trims and no crown molding on it. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's what it comes down to. People's see the finishes of the houses and they say, well, it's not as good as it used to be. Whereas back in, 50, 60, 70 years ago, when you built a house, it was almost like a piece of art, right? The time that went into something as simple as banisters up a staircase.
Yeah.
That was all hand. Yeah.
It was a lot of time.
There's a lot of time to do that.
Handcrafted.
Exactly. Well, it was. It was. And they have that still today, but you pay for it. Mm-hmm. So it becomes, then you get a house price that goes up quite high because of all those nice finishes to it.
So the tornado in Barrie, it had nothing to do. I mean, they were destroyed.
Yeah. But if that was, say, in a neighborhood that had houses that were 80 years old, roofs would have came off of those ones.
The same thing would have happened. Yeah. Well, I mean, 80 years old, but if it happened earlier, the houses would have been younger. There's less wear and tear. Mm-hmm. Compared to what happened now, these houses are probably 10 years old. I don't know.
Yeah, 10 to 15. And what happened in that scenario with the tornado, basically the wind blows so fast it actually creates a vacuum. And what happens is it doesn't blow the roof off. Mm-hmm. It creates a negative pressure around the outside of the house. So the pressure inside of the house is greater than the pressure outside of it. And it actually literally sucks it right off. So that's how it comes off. So if it was whether a house was built 5 years ago, yesterday, or 30 or 50 years ago, the only advantage was with the older homes, the roofs were actually fixed, like screwed onto the sidewall structures, which is another engineering topic altogether.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. So it would have happened. And what they're talking about that now is what they call our hurricane straps. Okay. And what it is you literally bolt the roof. Like the roofs get nailed down on top of it, but they actually put a bracket on it to hold it onto the side wall framing of it. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be, it's coming up in our next building code. I presume that it's going to be mandatory to be done at that time.
Okay, hopefully.
Oh, most likely it will be. Yeah. And the other thing that you have to consider is, so last time Barrie had a tornado was May 31st, 1985, I think it was, right? And it basically came across Highway 400 right at Essa Road, up the hill, and you could see when you came through and the swath of houses were just all demolished. And then the next time we had a tornado up to that magnitude was last year.
It was last year.
And we are in a tornado corridor. If you take a look at the overall province, the amount of houses that have any kind of catastrophic effect because of tornadoes is very, very, very small, right? So it's not, when they come and change the code on things, it's something that has to, it's not just like a one-off time, it has to happen repeatedly. Even though it's only happened twice in the Barrie area and in Ontario itself very minimally, the building code will definitely reflect that.
Yeah.
So it's not like, well, geez, now we got to nail all our roofs down because tornadoes coming through. It doesn't happen that often.
Okay. Well, thanks for clearing that up.
I'm glad.
I mean, I don't have the expertise to say whether or not what you're saying is accurate. I have to just go with it.
Well, if you believe that, I got some inland waterfront property for you.
Yeah, but as it relates to hours, though, so now that you're running your own company, what hours would a civil engineer look at working per week, like, is it about above 40?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
yeah,
about
yeah,
40.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You're talking 60 hours a week.
That's a lot of hours though.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the thing is in the building trades, because more so in the past, our climate dictated how long you worked. So when the summertime came around, you were working minimum 10 hours a day, usually 12 hours a day, because your season was short. You know, once November comes around and the snow comes by, you're basically less hours, plus the weather's getting to the point where you don't work in the wintertime. We pretty much work all year round now. Where our constraints is daylight. So in the wintertime, we don't have as much daylight.
Yeah.
So, you don't work 10 hours a day. You might work 8 hours a day. Now, having said that, people are still coming onto job sites at 7 o'clock in the morning and still staying till 5 o'clock.
So 10 hours per day, and that's like Monday to Friday?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hours.
Yeah. And so when you're working, when you start getting up into the kind of the upper management side of things, department heads and project management on these things, you're taking your work home with you at night.
That's got to take a toll on you, though.
It
like,
does.
when do you have time to golf?
I don't golf.
When do you have time to do what you enjoy doing?
Work on my cottage?
Working on your cottage. I was just about to say that. Yeah.
On my days off.
Which is?
So for me now, my hours have dropped down dramatically. Okay. Like I don't work more than 40 hours
because
a week.
you're working on your own.
Correct.
For yourself.
Yeah. I chose to. I chose to. But no, I mean, I keep my hours down now because for me, time is more important than money. Right? Okay. Quality time is more important.
Aww.
I want to have,
Mark.
And it's I still struggle with trying to keep things in balance with time. It's a very difficult thing for me to do because I'm driven, and being driven is a blessing and a curse at the same time because I don't know when to stop. So I got to consciously correct myself on a regular basis saying, look, this is all you're going to do right now. Don't take on any more work, which is the hardest thing when the phone rings and somebody says they want to do it. I want to say, yes, I can get it done for you now.
But a lot of people feel like they would be less successful if they don't put all of their time in their work, right? So how did you come to like communicate to yourself that, time is more quality time with, myself, the people I love is more important than driving this business to the best possible version of itself?
Best way I could put it, it's not healthy. Yeah. And I want it to be healthy.
Say it again for the people in the back.
It's not healthy. You have a lot of health complications that can happen when you work too hard. Yeah. Right? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all kinds of different challenges when you don't when you're driven too hard in that way. And at the end of the day, it doesn't create any more happiness. And the other part of it is you can work as hard as you want to try and get yourself to the point you want, but in a snap of a finger, something can happen either in the business or the industry or things around you, and that can be gone like that. Yeah. So where's your priorities? Yeah. So it's really important to keep a good work-life balance. Balance, yeah. Absolutely. Balance. Yeah. And I'm speaking from experience. I've been on both sides of the coin.
How long did it take to teach yourself that, though? Because was it just the wisdom just happened a couple of years back, or when?
I would say it happened probably about 12 years ago.
Okay.
It happened about 12 years ago.
Was there a turning point?
In the sense that when I was doing the doing the energy audits. And the federal government program that was running at that time, when it came to the end, they abruptly pulled the program. And so basically I lost my business because I had staff that I had to pay. We extended ourselves quite a bit financially to get that company headed in that direction. And if things were going right, then we were going to be very, successful. But, it was just a perfect storm. And then, of course, when that happened, it was just like, what do I do now? I've been working all these years and it's all gone. Yeah. So 12 years ago, I started all over again not from bottom line, from below the bottom line, and put things back in perspective. And what's important for me? Well, number one's my family. right? Number 2 is my sanity. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
And
that's a hard lesson, you know, having it all, just the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of energy you've put into it, and now it's just all gone. And you're starting from the bottom.
Yeah. It is. It was challenging. It was, but the way that I do things today is a heck of a lot more balanced than it used to be, right? You know, we start off our mornings every morning with getting together, myself and my staff, and we're saying, okay, what does it need to be done today? Let's just concentrate on the work for today. Don't worry about this week or next month. Let's just concentrate on what we need today, get through the day as best as we can. And then when we start the next morning says, okay, how did we do yesterday? Everything's going good? Fantastic. Where do we need to, you know, concentrate a little bit more on one spot, a little less on another spot, and just kind of just take it easy.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that is a lesson that should be learned halfway through your life? Like, would you, because you have this, the reason I'm asking this is because you have a young graduate that's full of energy, full of life, ready to pour out, ready to build something amazing as it pertains to their profession. I think that's a good thing.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Being driven is neither good nor bad. It's how you use it, right? So, you know, if you have the energy and the drive to do something, by all means, do it. But don't have it control you.
Yeah.
Right?
You be the master of it.
That's
not
right.
It be the master of you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where I say it becomes you can get caught up in it quite quickly. Yeah. Where you know that drive to achieve whatever it is that you're achieving, whether it's the monetary success, whether it is the business success, whether it is the kind of personal success of your peers, you know, the attaboys you get on your back. Like, what is it that's really driving it behind?
The money.
Yeah. Like they say, and we've heard this before, money isn't the root of all evil. It's the desire of money.
The desire for it. Yeah.
Exactly. So don't let it be your desire.
Yeah.
You know.
This is the road, and this is the road that you've chosen. Do you love being a civil engineer?
Yeah.
Would you recommend it highly to?
Yeah. If you're an engineering geek, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Did you have experience with other areas rather than? I guess. Do you have any insight into other areas of engineering?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of engineering. There's civil engineering, which we were talking about a lot, and the structural engineering, which is part of civil. But then you have mechanical engineering, right? If you are what we call like a gearhead, you know, cars, engines, stuff like that, mechanical engineering is the route to go in. Yeah, right? Yeah. Electrical engineering. I mean, electrical engineering, both on the macro and micro level, you know, is a huge industry, you know, whether you're working with circuit boards or systems, or if you're working up on, you know, big electrical infrastructures.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's your electricity is like water. It's a flow, right? So whether you're calculating out a flow on a pipe or you're calculating out the
flow of electricity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and in each one of those disciplines, there's sub-disciplines in them, right? You know, if you're dealing with mechanical, are you dealing with like heating systems, right? Or are you dealing with engines, you know, diesel, gasoline. Now you're getting into EVs, electric vehicles, right? That's a cross between a mechanical and / electrical, which both come together at the same time. So there's a lot of crossovers in them.
This is a never-ending field.
Oh.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been doing engineering since,
the beginning of time.
Well, yeah. I mean, when the Romans were building the roads.
Yeah.
And the aqueducts.
They had a civil engineer.
They did. They did, and the systems that they use we're still using today, the same rationale. So it's been around for a long time, and it's going to be around for as long as this planet's spinning around the sun. You'll need engineers.
You'll need engineers.
Absolutely.
It's a good field to hop into. Thank you so much, Mark.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having the opportunity.
This has been just a fascinating conversation. I think I learned a lot more about the field of engineering and specifically civil engineering because you're here, like you're joining us on Tea Talks. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your life and just how the insight you have in this profession.
It's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed this.
And the tea, sorry it wasn't as strong as you like it.
Oh, it was fine.
Sorry it wasn't as strong. Anyway, so thank you guys for joining in this conversation with Mark Rogowski, owner of your company.
Mertech,
owner of Mertech. And it was just been a great discussion about the profession of civil engineering. And be sure to leave any questions or comments that you have. We'll address them. Let us know if this is a field that you're interested in, if you're looking into becoming an engineer, specifically a civil engineer. And be sure to join us next time for Tea Talks with Suanesh. Take care. Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. There was one area that I didn't talk about on the air, but one of the problems with engineering is specifically with the big construction.